Two friends, Max and I, were driving from Ohio to Indiana. We were on a business trip for our computer technology corporation. I was already 37 years old, and Max teased me about being afraid of women and remaining single forever. There was a traffic jam on the main road due to an accident, so we decided to take a different route. "Hey Bruce, at this rate, you might never find a girlfriend," Max chuckled, glancing over at me. "Maybe we'll find you a nice ghost lady in Indiana." "Very funny, Max," I sighed, shaking my head. "Maybe you should focus on the road instead of my love life." After 2 hours, it got very dark. The GPS was acting up, and the signal kept dropping. We got lost. "Damn it, this thing is useless," Max grumbled, tapping the screen of the GPS. "We should have stayed on the main road." "Relax, we'll find our way. Just keep driving," I replied, though my voice lacked confidence. Ahead, we saw a house. "Look, over there," Max pointed. "Let's ask for directions." The house loomed in the distance, shrouded in darkness and mystery. It was an old Gothic mansion. The architecture was an eerie mix of Victorian and Gothic styles, with sharp, pointed gables and an ominous tower that reached toward the sky like a skeletal finger. The windows were tall and narrow, framed by dark, heavy drapes that seemed to move slightly, as if watched by unseen eyes. "That place looks like it's straight out of a horror movie," I muttered, feeling a chill run down my spine. The paint was peeling, revealing weathered wood beneath, and the entire structure was draped in a thick layer of ivy, which twisted and coiled around the pillars like snakes. The front yard was overgrown with weeds, and a rusty, wrought iron fence surrounded the property, its gate hanging ajar, creaking in the wind. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "Come on, it's just a house," Max said, though he didn't sound entirely convinced himself. "Let's just see if anyone's home." We approached the gate, which squeaked loudly as Max pushed it open. As we walked up the cracked stone path to the front door, a sense of foreboding washed over us. Max knocked on the door, the sound echoing through the still night. We waited, but there was no answer. Max raised his hand to knock again, but before he could, the door creaked open. Standing in the doorway was a woman dressed in old-fashioned clothing. Her dark dress was intricate, with lace and velvet, as if she had stepped out of a different century. Her eyes, piercing and slightly unsettling, seemed to examine us thoroughly. "Good evening," she said in a soft, almost musical voice. "Can I help you?" Max and I exchanged glances before I stepped forward. "Hi, we seem to be lost. Our GPS isn't working, and we were hoping you could give us directions." The woman smiled faintly. "It's too dark to travel safely. Even if I explained the route, you'd likely get lost again. Please, stay the night. Continue your journey tomorrow morning." Max looked at me, eyebrows raised. "What do you think, Bruce?" I hesitated but nodded. "All right, thank you. We appreciate your hospitality." We entered the house, the door closing behind us with a soft thud. The interior was dimly lit by flickering candles. "This way," the woman said, leading us up a grand staircase. The steps creaked under our weight as we ascended. She showed us to a bedroom with 2 large antique beds. The room was decorated with heavy drapes and ornate furniture, giving it an old-world charm. "You can rest here. I'll return in 10 minutes to take you to dinner," she said, then left, closing the door quietly behind her. As soon as she was gone, Max turned to me with a grin. "Looks like you found yourself a future wife with a creepy old mansion to boot." "Very funny, Max," I muttered, though I couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling that clung to me. True to her word, 10 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. The woman entered, gesturing for us to follow her. We walked down a long, dimly lit corridor and descended a staircase to a large, rustic kitchen. The aroma of cooked food filled the air, making my stomach growl despite the circumstances. Seated at the long wooden table was a young woman, probably in her 20s, dressed in a similarly antiquated style. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple yet elegant fashion. 2 men were also present, one around 50 years old, with graying hair and a stern expression, and a younger man who couldn't have been much older than Max and me. "Please sit," the woman said, motioning to the empty chairs at the table. "Allow me to introduce my family. This is my daughter, Lydia, my husband, Edward, and our son, William." "Thank you for your hospitality," I said, trying to break the tension. "I'm Bruce, and this is Max." Edward nodded slightly. "You're welcome here. It's rare to have visitors." On the table were platters of roasted meat with vegetables, macaroni and cheese, and a large apple pie. I scooped some macaroni and cheese onto my plate, while Max eagerly piled his plate with the roasted meat and vegetables. "Oh, this is delicious," Max said to our hostess after his first bite. "My daughter Lydia prepared it," she replied with a proud smile. Max grinned and winked at me. I rolled my eyes and punched him lightly on the back. As I did, Max's wristwatch slipped off his arm and fell to the floor. I bent down to retrieve it and froze when I saw a cat under the table. It was gnawing on something that looked disturbingly like a human finger. I squinted to get a better look, my heart pounding in my chest. Just then, Edward's loud laughter rang through the room, jolting me back to the moment. He was laughing heartily at a joke I had missed. "Come on, Bruce," I thought to myself. It must have been a trick of the light. There's no way it was a finger. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur for me. I couldn't shake the image from my mind, but I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination playing tricks. Max, oblivious to my unease, continued to enjoy the meal, making small talk with the family. Finally, the hostess stood and motioned for us to follow her. "Let me show you back to your room. You must be tired." We followed her back up the dimly lit staircase to the bedroom with the 2 antique beds. She opened the door and gestured for us to enter. "Thank you," I said, forcing a smile. "Good night. I'll see you in the morning," she replied, closing the door softly behind her. As soon as she left, Max flopped onto his bed, stretching out with a satisfied sigh. "Man, that was one good meal. And did you see Lydia? She's kinda cute in that old-timey dress." I didn't respond, still preoccupied with what I'd seen under the table. "Hey, you okay?" Max asked, noticing my silence. Yeah, just tired," I lied, lying down on my bed and staring up at the ornate ceiling. "Let's just get some sleep." "All right, suit yourself," Max said, yawning. "See you in the morning." As Max quickly drifted off to sleep, I lay there in the dark, my mind racing. What had I really seen under that table? I couldn't sleep. The urge to use the bathroom pulled at me persistently. Carefully, I opened the bedroom door, trying not to disturb Max, who was sound asleep. In the dimly lit corridor, illuminated only by flickering wall-mounted candles, the curtains by the window fluttered gently in the breeze. As I descended the grand staircase to the first floor, my footsteps seemed to echo ominously in the silent house. There was no sign of the hosts. Suddenly, I heard moans, possibly of pain or distress. Concerned that something might have happened to the homeowners, I followed the sound. Opening the basement door, I descended into darkness. A man's anguished cries grew louder. My phone was upstairs in the bedroom, so I reached for my lighter. With a flick, the cellar room was bathed in dim light. There, a man was tied to a pipe, missing one arm and one leg, covered in blood, writhing in pain. He spotted me and screamed, No, please spare me." I was overcome with fear. Just then, I heard the basement door open again. Quickly, I hid behind a wooden barrel as footsteps approached, accompanied by the glow of a lantern. "It seems our guests enjoyed your meat," the man with the lantern said calmly to the captive. I realized with horror that this was a family of cannibals. Don't scream so loudly, the man warned the captive in a low voice. You'll scare our guests. They'll be joining you soon. My mind raced with terror as I struggled to comprehend the nightmare unfolding before me. I knew I had to find a way out to escape the clutches of this deranged family before it was too late. I stealthily made my way back upstairs, my heart pounding with each silent step. The relief of reaching my room washed over me, but it was short-lived as I realized Max was nowhere to be seen. Panic started to rise within me, but before I could act, I instinctively reached for my cell phone lying on the nightstand. Just as I began to dial 911, a chilling voice from behind stopped me in my tracks. Put the phone down, commanded a woman's voice. I turned slowly, fear gripping my chest. It was Lydia, holding a knife to Max's throat. My mind raced, trying to comprehend the gravity of the situation unfolding before me. Lydia's cold gaze sent a shiver down my spine as she called out to the others. Swiftly, they bound us and dragged us down to the cellar. The captive man, weak and wounded, recounted his harrowing ordeal. He had wandered into this house 2 days ago, misled and desperate. They had fed him and then, under cover of night, tied him up and left him in the cellar. By morning, the horrifying truth dawned on him. They were cannibals. Nausea churned in my stomach, and I struggled to maintain composure. Max, pale and trembling beside me, retched at the thought of what he had unknowingly consumed. Our situation seemed hopeless as we sat in the darkness of the cellar, bound and at the mercy of our captors. I used to meditate regularly, finding solace in its calming influence. In the midst of our dire situation, I knew panicking wouldn't serve us well. Taking a deep breath, I repeated this calming exercise 3 times, trying to center my thoughts amidst the chaos around us. And then, in a moment of clarity, a memory surfaced from my previous hiding spot behind the barrel in the corner of the cellar. I recalled seeing a glint of glass nearby. With my hands and feet tightly bound, I twisted and squirmed like a trapped animal, inching my way towards the barrel where I remembered the shard to be. It took agonizing minutes of strained effort, but finally, I reached the spot and grasped the piece of glass firmly between my teeth. I moved the point gently until I could position it against the rough hemp rope that bound Max's wrists. Using all the leverage my mouth could muster, I began to saw back and forth, the glass biting into the fibers of the rope. It was slow and painstaking work, but determination fueled each movement as I silently prayed for success. By the time the first hints of dawn brushed the cellar walls, my efforts bore fruit. With a final tug, the weakened rope gave way, freeing Max's hands. He wasted no time in returning the favor, his movements quick and efficient as he worked to untie my bonds. The relief of mobility flooded through me as I flexed my stiffened limbs, grateful for the return of circulation and the ability to move freely once more. We positioned ourselves strategically on either side of the cellar entrance, ready to take action when our captors returned. Max gripped a heavy brick, its weight reassuring in his hand, while I wielded a makeshift wooden club fashioned from a broken chair leg. Adrenaline surged through us as we waited in tense anticipation. The creak of the cellar door opening signaled the moment of truth. When the footsteps approached, we sprang into action with synchronized precision. Max's brick landed with a dull thud, felling the son of the homeowner before he could react. Simultaneously, I swung my club, connecting solidly with the daughter's shoulder, sending her crashing to the floor. As they lay dazed and stunned, we swiftly secured them with the remaining lengths of rope, binding their wrists and ankles securely. Knowing the danger they posed, we gagged them to prevent any outcry or warning to their family. As we made our escape from the cellar, I reassured the other captive that we would come back for him, knowing he would only hinder us now. Moving cautiously, we scanned our surroundings vigilantly. The dimly lit corridors of the mansion felt like a labyrinth of shadows and danger. Suddenly, a shrill screech pierced the air, and the patriarch of the cannibal family lunged at me, knocking me off balance. His weight bore down on me, pinning me to the cold stone floor. I struggled against his powerful grip, feeling the air squeeze from my lungs. Trying to run. Ha! He snarled, his face contorted with rage. No one escapes from me. I fought desperately, gasping for breath, when I saw his wife wielding a gleaming machete near Max. She grinned menacingly, her eyes gleaming with malice. In that moment of desperation, Max appeared behind the cannibal, his hands reaching for the man's neck as he shouted for me to flee. The grip around my throat loosened momentarily as the cannibal grappled with Max. Summoning every ounce of strength, I managed to wriggle free and scrambled to my feet. Adrenaline surged through me as I sprinted towards the nearest exit. Behind me, I heard a gut-wrenching cry that sent chills down my spine. Glancing back, I saw the machete impale Max's body. It was a sight that seared into my memory, driving me onward as I raced out the door and into the night. Thankfully, the cannibal husband and wife were not agile enough to catch me. I dashed to my car, fumbling with the keys in my trembling hands. Once inside, I sped away, my heart racing with a mix of terror and relief. As soon as I found a safe place, I called the police, recounting the horrifying ordeal. By the time law enforcement arrived, the cannibal family had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the grisly aftermath of their monstrous deeds. The cemetery was quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos and terror of that fateful night 4 months ago. Max's headstone, a simple yet poignant marker, bore his name and the dates of his too short life. "I'm sorry, Max," I murmured, my voice barely audible above the rustling of the trees. I wish things had turned out differently. Memories flooded back of Max's laughter, his jokes during our road trips, and his unwavering loyalty as a friend. But most of all, I recalled the horrifying night we encountered the cannibal family. "I'm sorry, Max," I whispered again, my voice breaking. "You gave me a chance to live. I'll make sure it wasn't in vain." With a heavy heart, I placed a small bouquet of wildflowers at his grave, a humble tribute to a brave friend who had given everything so that I could escape.